Okay, well, thank you for joining, and we'll get started. Today, our Cybersecurity Month webinar is going to be on cybersecurity tricks to outsmart hackers. So I'm Daniel Schwartz, President and founder of Design IT Solutions. In just a couple months, we will hit 20 years in business. So we've been around for a little bit. I'm also a Forbes Technology Council member. So if you are bored and want to read some cybersecurity articles, you can go over to Forbes.com and check out a couple of those. Or if you're having a hard time sleeping at night, you can check them out and see how that goes for you. All right, so let's get started. Today, we're going to talk about the current threat landscape, 7 cybersecurity tricks to outsmart hackers, how to know if your data is already stolen, and then we'll have some Q&A time at the end. So feel free to pop any questions you have in the Q&A box, and we'll cover those as we get to the end. So there's a considerable amount of attacks happening all the time. So this little graph here shows you the average weekly number of cyber attacks in organizations worldwide in 2024 Q1 versus 2025 Q1 and broken down by industry. So if you look here, some of these at the top, they kind of bounce around each year, but if you look at the light blue compared to the dark blue, every category, regardless of which one you're in, saw an increase in the amount of attacks. We saw slight increase in telecommunications over healthcare, but healthcare is usually the third highest targeted industry. Then we have several, below that. So depending on what industry you're in, you may have, seen an increase or stayed relatively similar, but across the board, all attacks are increasing. And you can see it's a significant number of attacks weekly as well on all of these industries. But who's doing this, and why do I care? Well, there's a couple things. There's organized hacking groups. There's nation state type hacking groups, which these usually have political ideologies behind them. They're going after government entities, energy, gas, specific industries to cripple economies, to cause issues with geopolitical functions. And they're very sophisticated and can get into almost anywhere given enough time, and not being detected. Then there's independent hacking groups. These sometimes are led by various ideologies, but a lot of times they're just there for profit. They just want to cause havoc and make money. So they're very sophisticated as well. They're very organized, and they come after your data if you end up on their list. Or there's very specific groups they're going after. Usually they're very large groups where they can get a pretty sizable payout, like Change Healthcare last year, one of the largest healthcare breaches ever. And all total, it was like $2.4 billion that we rounded the total cost in that outage, and what they did, and between the ransom and loss of revenue, all that, it was pretty significant. But then really the most troublesome is what we call the script kiddies. Now, these are not technical people most of the time. They might have a little bit of technical knowledge, but in general, these are kids that are at home, coming home after school, don't have things to do, go get on their computer, and they are using third-party software to ransom you. They're essentially like a CRM. This picture here is of a product called Jokeroo. It is ransomware as a service. So if you use like Office 365 as a service, or your CRM, your EMR, or whatever, industry you're in, you're paying for a cloud hosted service, you're using software as a service. This is ransomware as a service, essentially. So you go in, you put your Bitcoin information in there, and then you work to send out emails to get this product out to people. And you get somebody to click on it and they get ransomed, you get a commission of whatever they get. So you don't have to be technical at all. Script kiddies make up the most, or the largest group of attack surface, I guess. They're the largest grouping because They don't need a lot of experience. They work independent, and they just use other people's tools. I've got a dark web video you can go look at on YouTube where I tour the dark web and I show you some of the stores and the data that's out there. And in there, I show you how they can go in and buy these tools for about $8 that help them spread ransomware. So it's very cheap. And then the developers of those tools, which are good, knowledgeable hackers, they will help them use the tools as well. So the script kiddies, these are the ones that are likely going to end up getting into your environment with their tool sets that they've bought, borrowed, whatever, what have you, using software as a service, just opening the door for some other hackers to get in, and then they get a commission that way. So, because it's very prolific, you see it all the time. Hacking happens all the time. One of the things people tell me all the time is, well, yeah, but nobody knows about me or my company, or nobody cares about my data. And in general, that's usually true, except that you care about your data, so it has value. Essentially, it's what we call the kidnapping principle, right? People don't kidnap to start a family. They kidnap because unless you have teenagers, you typically want your kids back, right? And then sometimes the teenagers, you want those back too. But in general, the teenagers, you might negotiate with the ransom, say, I don't know, depending on my teenagers, they might call me and be like, hey, we're actually going to pay you to take them back. So, but in general, right? People don't kidnap to start a family. They kidnap because you want your kids back. They will ransom your data because it has value to you. So it doesn't matter who you are, really, where what business you're in. If you have data that has value to you, then it has value to anybody trying to ransom it or cause havoc in your environment. So the piece that's, more troubling now too is we've set up great backups for people, right? You probably have good backups in place. And you've worked really hard to secure those backups so that hackers can't get to them if they're in your environment. Well, the problem is, so you get ransomed and you're like, hey, I'm not paying the ransom. I'm just going to roll back to my last backup last night. I'll recover, I'll re-enter the data that I lost. We'll figure it out for a day, whatever. I'm not paying the ransom. And then the hackers send you another note and they're like, cool, except we also exfiltrated your data. So we have a full copy in a public cloud and we're going to release it publicly if you don't pay the ransom anyway. Now you have to decide what's that data worth if it gets released publicly. And of course, depending on your industry, there's regulations around that data that you have that can't, you'd be in violation. So now you're stuck. Now what do you do? So there's double exploitation in play. One is, yes, they ransom you for a key to decrypt your data that they've now encrypted, but you say, I don't care. Well, now you got to pay or they're going to release it publicly. In the dark web video that I referenced that's on YouTube, you can see I took you to some of these hacker sites where that data is there listed publicly. You can just download it. Terabytes of data from all these companies that have been hacked that's just accessible to anybody. So this is a bigger risk now than just even the ransomware. If you have things set up properly, you roll back, you can get back up and working, but you don't want that data out there publicly. The next thing I hear is, well, we're compliant, we're HIPAA compliant, we're PCI compliant, we're XYZ, we're compliant by whatever regulations we have. The problem is compliance doesn't equal security. Compliance means that you have a set of policies in place that you are adhering to, and you're actually following your own policies or the policies around whatever safeguards and regulations you're supposed to have in place. So this is regulatory framework, essentially. Security, though, has physical controls. It has logical controls in place that may be part of a framework, but not comprehensive. So the security piece is much more integrated or involved than just the compliance. So just because you're compliant with your industry's regulations doesn't mean you're actually secure from what hackers will try to use to get into your environment. So making sure that you're actually addressing both sides, because of course you need to be compliant for whatever regulations you have, but you also need that layer, the additional layers of security that may not fall under compliance to keep your data and your organization safe. Now, the other thing is, people are like, well, we have cyber liability, or maybe you don't. It's good to check. Um, we're used to with insurance, whether it's personally with auto insurance, homeowners insurance, on the business side, business owners insurance, uh, the liability insurance for things, malpractice insurance if you're in healthcare, etc. That we're used to writing a check and having coverage. That's it, right? We pay them, now we're insured. We don't have to think about it. Cyber liability insurance is unique in that there's due diligence and things you have to do to be compliant with your liability insurance requirements. So it's not just write a check and forget about it. You actually, if you have it, you filled out a questionnaire. In that questionnaire, you said you're doing this, or you're not doing this. A lot of times they'll insure you with the recommendation that you have to get to this before next year, or the premium's just higher. Fine, except that in that documentation, it also says that you agree to be doing X, Y, and Z in your organization. Part of it's what you answered and said you were doing, and then part of it's also like, hey, by the way, you also need to be taking these safeguards and these precautions, and you should be doing monthly trainings, etc. So then, if there's an incident that happens, the insurance company is going to say, well, were you doing all these things that you agreed to? And if they can prove you didn't, then your claim will be denied. So making sure that you're in compliance with your cyber liability insurance is really important. And a lot of people have not, or have figured out that they were not in compliance and are working towards being compliant. But unfortunately, a lot of people found out after they were compromised and their insurance claim was denied. And that's a tough pill to swallow, because now you're dealing with a ransom plus you have nobody to help you. And it can be quite a financial burden. There were some statistics out there about the number of businesses that go out of business when they've had a cyber incident, and it was staggering, because these are smaller businesses, but it's very hard to recover between the brand, recognition issue with now knowing as you had a incident, but also the financial cost, the loss of revenue, and then trying to recover and rebuild can just be overwhelming. So, making sure your liability insurance is active and you're compliant is really important to helping make sure you stay in business after an event like that. So AI is helping hackers. It's also helping on the security side. So we've got this, back and forth level of fights with AI fighting AI. So AI is helping hackers in that they can write code and help them generate code to exploit your environment so much faster. It used to be that hackers would live in a network for about 30 days once they got in. But that has come down to about 14 days. So about half the time, because AI is helping them develop and write code so much faster, that they can get in, find a vulnerability in your environment, and then AI will write the exploit so that they can use that. And by hackers getting in, it's so easy for them these days with phishing emails. 91% of business compromise actually comes from an email compromise, someone clicking a phishing link. Um, so having AI has helped the hackers, but we're also using it on the protective side. So we're using AI engines that are monitoring the interactions on the computer, and they're looking for malicious intent. They're looking for things that are causing, harm, or, it's out of ordinary. We're looking for things that don't fit. And then we can execute a block and it pops up and you're like, oh yeah, I'm actually doing that. It's fine. And then you're good to go. Or, oh, I'm not doing that. Oh, wow, hackers are in here. Let's trace, they've been in there for 10 days. So AI is helping to watch and reduce, the vulnerabilities, but hackers are using it at the same time. So it's this back and forth battle as we, build up these AI functions. Where's it going to get to? I don't know. AI also does a lot of things incorrectly. So sometimes it's building more vulnerabilities into the vendor's code. So we're seeing more issues that hackers can exploit because AI was writing the code and not engineers. So we're going to see that kind of back and forth for quite a while in the industry. One of the other things that's happening is what we call malvertising. So when you search, let's say on Google, your results come back. Now there's paid results, but there's also advertising results. Now the advertising results, Google, for example, does a one-click verification. So when you click on that link, it will scan the next page to see if it's malicious. And then from there, that's it, right? They can't go 100 pages deep. So what hackers are doing is they're buying this advertising space. They're creating a blank website that has a 5-second refresh. And what that means is, so you click on it, you go to that page. Google has scanned that page already and says, nope, there's no malware on it. But 5 seconds later, that page does a refresh redirect. So all of a sudden, it's just blank. Like it looks like it's loading, it's loading, it's loading, it's loading, and then boom, a page loads. Well, that page is different than the one you clicked on because it had a timer sitting there and then it redirected you to a different page. Now that page is malicious and has malicious content on it. Google didn't know that because they scanned the initial page. So they don't know that there was a refresh timer waiting. And now they've essentially redirected you to a malicious site. So here's a malicious site, right? You click on it, it takes a while. The thing is this page that loads up here is different. And it pops up and it's like, hey, this is whatever free software, the um your computer's at risk. Like it makes all these windows pop up like this that look like they're from the Microsoft Security Center on your computer. And they're like, oh, we need your password to verify. And now you typed in your password. They just got your username and password. Now that could be for your whole domain. That could be just for your machine. Whatever. They now have a set of credentials to use to try and compromise your environment. The other thing they can do is download software, or they're like, hey, run this so we can fix it. And you're like, okay, yes. And you click it, right? Because it looks legitimate. But it wasn't the initial page that hackers paid for. And so there was no verification. So you don't know that you just ended up in malware zone. So what do we do about this? How do we help the situation? What are some things we can do to outsmart the hackers? Well, first we want to start with email and password security. If you don't have multi-factor authentication set up, you need to set that up today. It's free for most everything you use. It's free to enable. If you're using Microsoft 365, you can go turn it on today, no cost to you. The app is free. The authentication is free. So add that to whatever you're doing. Put that on your list today. Anything else you can add MFA to, do that as well. Don't store your passwords in your browsers. Those are so easy to compromise, so easy to get those passwords out and use them any way we want. If a hacker's on your machine or just even one of those malicious sites can pull those passwords in plain text and usernames. We have a scan that I'll talk about in a little bit that will show you how easy it is. But multi-factor authentication anywhere you can, not saving passwords in your browser, and a unique password for each site. And people are like, I can't remember that many passwords. I use, my password.netflix, my password.amazon, my password.gmail, whatever. Don't do that either. Because as soon as one of those passwords is compromised, hackers will see it in the dark web and they'll be like, oh, we know their cadence, so we can get into all their accounts, even though they have a unique password for each one. So working to make sure you have unique passwords. Use a password keeper, one that is vetted and good. We have a list that we're putting out. We did a little video on password keepers. Go check that out if you're interested in which one to use. There's great ones out there. There's ones that can do your whole organization for one fee, and then it has a personal and a corporate side. So all your employees can get used to storing their passwords in a password keeper It integrates with the browser, so it feels like they've been saved in the browser, but they're not. You can access it from your phone for browsing on the phone. And then if you have a separation with an employee, you can go in and strip out the corporate side of that account. They can retain the personal side and then move those passwords off or reset them or what have you to a different keeper over time. They don't lose it just because they're no longer working with the organization, but it gives you more control over the passwords they have anyway. So email should be secured with MFA and, talking about phishing emails and that kind of stuff. But password security is critical. Having multi-factor authentication anywhere you can reduces the ability for hackers to get into your environment. Because if they just get a compromised account, they still need that extra layer. Now, there are ways around it, ways to trick people with it, but it still makes it more complicated. Software updates and patch management is very key. There's security updates put out by vendors all the time. If you use Microsoft, you'll see there's patches that come out every month. Adobe has patches because somebody can send you a malicious PDF. If Adobe's not patched, they can compromise your environment just by getting you to open that PDF. So making sure that all of your software is up to date and patched on a regular cadence. Usually we don't want to see more than 2 weeks of outdated software. We want to keep that patching going. Using patch automation will help with that. There's various ways to do that, but keeping your software up to date will help reduce what we call the surface area of attack for hackers. The smaller that area is, the less likely you are to get compromised because there's just not areas for them to get in. Social engineering awareness. Now, this is one of the it's usually free or very cheap things that you can do to help your security posture is training your employees. But I don't mean sitting down, having IT come in and talk to them for an hour or 2 hours till they are glossed over in the face and they didn't even hear anything after the first few minutes, because we know that can be boring. What we want to do is what we call top of mind security. And this is where we talk to them every couple weeks and we just say for 5 minutes, hey, by the way, MGM Grand and International was hacked, and it was done by voice changing AI. What they did is they called in, they made it sound like they were IT, they got on a machine, and then they were able to compromise all of these casinos in Vegas. People couldn't cash out, people couldn't check out of their rooms, people couldn't even leave the building. All the HVAC was turned off. And talking about how they did it, right? Stories are relatable and they can retain that information and it becomes more familiar. And then when they get a phone call, they'll remember that and it's like, oh, wait, is this fake? Versus just saying, hey, be careful, hackers will call you this, and talking about all the things. Social engineering awareness, talking about what hackers are doing today in real world stories that are relatable will help your environment stay more secure. So staying, training and understanding what's happening is key. Secure browsing and network protection. So of course we still have to put all the protection on our devices, right? We need our endpoint security, that antivirus, those AI engines I was talking about, our firewalls that are protecting the perimeter. Back in the day, all we cared about was the moat and castle type setup, right? We had a moat around the castle. If the drawbridge was down, people could come over. If it was up, we were safe. That's kind of the firewall effect that we put around the perimeter of our office or network. The problem is people just let everybody in by clicking on a phishing link or opening this remote tool for hackers. So we bypass all of that security, but we still need that layer because it's still an entry point that hackers can use. So we still need the firewall. We still need that access set up or that control to help with that. So secure browsing, we want to be careful where we're using our passwords. So if we go to a coffee shop or a hotel, we want a VPN in somewhere before we access banking information or financials or even corporate records that are critical. We want all that secured so that when we're browsing over the internet, nobody can see it. Because if you're at a coffee shop on public Wi-Fi, we're going to be doing a video on this actually, but I can intercept all of your traffic and record it. Then I can play it back later and break that encryption that you used and get your password. So sometimes I can actually break it right then and there. But it's very easy to compromise free Wi-Fi if you're using it. There's no keys involved. It's just you're accessing it. Even if there's a simple one, you go to the coffee shop and it says, brew today is the password. Well, the hackers know that too, so they can still get on the network and they can still capture all your packets. So being aware of where you're using and browsing will also help keep your data safe and secure. Monitoring the dark web. Do you even know if you have compromised credentials out there? Do you know what information on your company is out there? Because sometimes what will happen is there'll be a breach that you don't even know about, or someone phished somebody or got them to go to a site and enter the data, like the Malvertising screenshot I showed where it asked for a username and password. And that'll be on the dark web. You don't know what's out there. If you did, you could have that person change their password right away. But not knowing it's out there, and say you're on a 90-day password rotation, the hackers might have access to your credentials for 90 days before your password changes. So knowing what's happening, having some kind of monitoring is done. And anybody that wants a free scan of the dark web, we will do for you. You can put that in the chat and we will grab that and set you up with a free scan so you can see what's out there. We'll just go over it with you. No problem. But understanding what's out there is critical, but then ongoing, knowing, getting an alert, hey, your credentials just showed up on the dark web for this user, have them change their password. Protecting your backups. I mentioned earlier, about the double exploitation. We still don't want to deal with ransom, and depending on, hopefully you have security in place that won't let them exfiltrate your data. But if for some reason they are able to ransom, encrypt all your data, we do want to be able to pull from those backups. So your backups need to not only be functioning, they need to be secure. They can't be in the same location as all your other data, or hackers will just get to them and encrypt your backups. We've seen it happen, unfortunately. We've been called, and it's not a pretty sight when there's no data to restore from. So making sure that not only do you have functioning backups, but they're also protected and that nobody can get into them. And that they're air gapped, we call it. So if you have a local backup that also replicates to the cloud, but there's no way to access that cloud data except from some secure environment that is outside of your regular environment is really critical. And then knowing if you've been hacked. How many of you would know if somebody's been in your network? Using software that's analyzing and watching for that lateral movement or just anomalies in your environment is key. Knowing that somebody's in there or has been. Also, just a daily process where you come in and you go to your sent folder in Outlook and you look for emails you didn't send overnight. Hackers love, if they've compromised your email, they're going to send it when you're not looking. There'll also be deleted items that you didn't delete. Every once in a while going in and checking your rules, because hackers will go and create a mirror rule that takes a copy of your emails or moves them to a different folder so you don't see, but they see it and they can interact. A lot of times if they have access to your email, they're going to go in and see, can they get payments redirected to their banking account instead of yours? What can they do? How can they, financially gain from your email? What information can they use and manipulate to get any kind of money, either transferred or invoices resent, etc. Anything they can do, they're going to do, and they're going to cover their tracks. So going into your Outlook, your email, send, receive, look at anomalies from overnight, things you didn't do. So those are kind of the 7 big areas that will help you stay more secure, and prevent hackers from, getting your data and compromising your environment. Now, one of the things you can do is a full cybersecurity scan. Now, I mentioned we can do a dark web scan for you, but we also have a free scan that you can run on a handful of your devices, and we will give you a full report. There's no strings attached. That will show you the health of your environment. How well does your security stack up against what hackers are doing today? Will it block their tools? Will they be able to surveil your environment? Can they exfiltrate data? Can they steal your token? All that stuff. We're just going to give you a quick report on it. It's very simple. You don't need admin credentials to run it. There's no software to install. It's very easy to do. I have to get you a key and a link to run the software. So this will set up a meeting that's 10 minutes with me to get that set up for you and just explain how it works and what the report looks like. But again, it's not a sales pitch. We're happy to do this and get you that free scan. And then we'll go over the scan with you. And then from there, you can take that data and do what you want. Or, of course, we're happy to help if that's something you'd like. But yeah, so we have a free scan if you want. You can scan the QR code or go to designitsolutions.com/cyberscan. So now I'd like to turn it over to any questions that might be there. There's contact information here if you'd like to get a hold of me as well. Thank you for joining. I'm going to pull up our Q&A and chat.